Welcome back to another episode of Cold Red. I'm Ray Carr, and with me always is Fitz. Fitz, how are you?
I'm doing fine, Ray. Good to see you again.
You too, sir. Hey, tonight, our guest is a current but soon-to-be former Watertown, Massachusetts police detective with over 37 years of experience on the force, Dave McNeil. Dave, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on Cold Red.
Thanks, guys. Happy to be here. Very happy to be here.
What we usually start out about, Dave, is we like to find out a little bit about your background. Now, it's not going to be a big mystery of where you're from. We understand that.
Yes.
You can tell them just based on the accent alone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you can start out, you can tell them, hey, the car is in the yard, and don't worry about anything else, right?
But you got to say vehicle. You got to say vehicle. You can't say car because you'll get everybody in trouble. You can't say carpet. You got to say rug. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Exactly.
And by the way, Ray, no one would pick up on your Philadelphia dialect.
Oh, yeah, right, exactly.
When you take a glass of water and go to the Tap Mac.
So what's wrong with water?
There you go.
You know what I mean? Hey, Dave. So, Dave, where are you from? What was your upbringing like? How did you get into law enforcement?
All right. Well, if we're going to go way back, so officially, I'm from Watertown, Massachusetts. So we, the next town over from Boston, Mass, and we sit right really in the heart of everything that's around there. So there's, if you put Watertown in the middle, what touches us is Boston, Newton, Waltham, Cambridge, and Belmont. So we're right around all the big schools, Harvard University and BU and BC, and we're all around there. So Brandeis. And if you really think about it, from the time I was in first grade, I think my mother has a picture saying that I wanted to be a detective, not a police officer, wanted to be a detective. So Watertown, straight through. I went to Watertown High, got out, started working for the police department right out of high school. I started working there at 19 years old, took the test. Shortly afterwards, or a little while afterwards, got on as a patrol officer and then became a detective. And I've been there for 38 years, and I've been a detective for the last 22. So that's kind of the real run of the mill.
So we're going to tease the audience a little bit. You've worked a lot of different cases over those years. You're also a private investigator, which
right.
Not too many sworn officers can be also a PI at the same time. We'll get into that. But you also played a role in the Boston Marathon bombing on Patriots Day of 2013. And we're going to get into that down the line. So for the audience just tuning in, they have a very interesting set of stories to hear about you. So up front there.
What I'd like to know is you're 19 years old. You're nothing but a freaking kid.
Right.
What was your rookie year like?
Well, I started out answering phones, believe it or not. I started out, the police department actually ran the dispatch center for the fire department and the police department. So I actually started out as a fire alarm operator answering the phones in the police station. So when the first call came in, you're right, I was 19 years old, I fresh out of high school. And the first call that came in, I'll never forget it. It was after midnight. I picked it up and I just said, hello. I didn't even know what to do. I was there, I said, hello. And then after that, but I will tell you this, I was very lucky because, and I mean this sincerely, I was able to be trained by guys who I still call legends. I mean, these guys were giants to me, and they're giants now. And it was never, hey, get that kid out of here or whatever. They all took very good care of me. And I was around that police station since I was 10 years old. And they always accepted me. They always took me in, and they were happy when I got the job. And I know that made a huge difference in my career. I mean, I can't say enough about that whole era. That whole generation of policing was just unbelievable.
You probably had some Vietnam vets as training officers, and people even went, before that. I know that was me too. I even had a World War II veteran as my sergeant. I started in '76, so that's amazing. I'm always curious when departments, because I was a police officer in suburban Philadelphia, probably not too different than yours. And I'm always interested in what kind your chiefs of police over the years, were they did they come up through the ranks? Did they bring them in from Boston when they retired from there? How did it work?
Actually, I'm kind of glad you said that because so our chiefs have all come up through the ranks, and I've had the opportunity to work for 7 chiefs. And when I started working there was Chief Robert M. Kelly, Chief Kelly. And when you go back to an old hardcore chief, that's how it was. And, he came down, he demanded respect when you got it. That whole command staff at that time, when you walked in the door, you knew who was in charge. You didn't have to have bars or stars or whatever it is. Everybody knew what was going on. And there was a pecking order, and there was a chain of command, and it was very well respected. And I learned that very, very early. And when you talk about the Vietnam vets and things like that, I learned actually fits 10 years after the records and awards that these guys did when they were in Vietnam. They never talked about it. They never did anything. And then I found out after, when I got on, what these guys did. So again, you didn't have to walk in the door and say, I'm a hero. You found out later that it was the case, and it was evident. And now, 38 years later, I mean, I've had a couple of injuries. I've had surgeries. Those guys called me every single day when I had a surgery, and they're in their 80s and 90s now. And they called me every day, still call me a kid. And here I am retiring at the end of the month. So it's really, Watertown was a very close-knit, is a very close-knit town. And it really, it's a very, very nice, it's a great police department.
Dave, real quick, how many sworn when you first started and how many now?
When I first started, there was 120 sworn police officers, and there was 5 captains. We had night detectives. We had all that. Now there's 73 with a home rule petition of 55 patrolmen since 1990, and we've never been able to fill it since then. So we are cut down by 50 officers, and the town has more than doubled. But between life science buildings and towns and things like that, we are down to less than 75 sworn police officers, including the chief.
Is this a defunding issue, or has this been going on for decades? Or
well, it started with there was funding, there was attrition, there was just actual cuts that came down. And before, there used to be positions where we had walking routes, we had 2 in cars, we had double shifts, and then we started doing more with less. And I think that took legs. And it's not just us; it's kind of that whole general area. Of all the cities around there that are really, really are much lower than what they should be. Even police departments like Boston and Cambridge, bigger known police departments, are all suffering for police.
I find that to be true. I knew when I first came into Philly, when I transferred into Philadelphia from Buffalo in 91, they had probably just as many, if not more, police officers than the Bureau had agents. They had about 10,500, almost 11,000. They're down to like 6,000 right now, maybe in the 5,000s, which is like half their complement. And the city hasn't gotten smaller. I mean, they haven't shrunk the city, but they shrunk the force. And then they wonder why there's a problem with crime.
I mean, we were a community that you could call like the old style, if you really want to quote it, like a bedroom community. We were 6 miles from right downtown Boston. We can actually put 1 foot in the city limits of Boston and 1 in Watertown, right at the same line. But to get downtown was 6 miles away. Now we are, exploding. There's life science labs. There's everything that's there. And the kicker was, when I first started, and even growing up, everybody knew everybody on every street. Every family was there. Everybody knew everybody. And now there's been houses that have been made condos, things like that. We've changed a lot. We have apartment buildings. So we do as much as we can. And the real townies try to hold on to that feeling, but it's just difficult now to hold on to what's happening.
You wind up becoming a detective eventually.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to get to that point? Because that was your goal.
Yeah. It was 14 years from the time I first became a dispatcher out to being a detective. And then the last 22, well, maybe 12, because the last 22, 23 have been in detectives. So
what was the cases you worked early on in being a detective, and then compare that to what you're working now?
Okay, well, I'll tell you this, and I won't keep you long, but I will tell you, here's what happened. They assigned me as a temporary detective about 3 years after patrol. When I started working, I worked the east end of Watertown, and I was assigned to the east end housing projects. So I started working there. I was lucky enough to make a little name for myself by doing a few things, making some arrests, but I was also making good contacts in the community, in the housing project area. So I try to treat everybody fair, everybody with respect, and I've never had a problem. When I went in as a temporary detective, believe it or not, day one, we were working a case where they were going in and stealing credit cards from the gyms, the local gyms. It was recently released prisoners that could get out of jail that worked together, and they were doing a series of breaks in the gyms, taking credit cards out of high-end health clubs and the people would never know that their credit cards were hit until after they went and looked in their wallet. So you'd go work out, you come back to your locker, you'd look inside there, and everything looked great. The lock was put back on, it was perfect. So make a long story short, I went undercover in there for 22 days until we actually arrested the guy. And the first couple of days, you could go into the gym and hang around and just wait in the locker room. And then after a while, people start looking, going, okay, what's with this guy? Why is he not doing anything? And I'm making excuses and doing whatever. But I ended up catching the guy. I got my jaw broke on the day. And but we ended up, indicted 7 people, recovered $1 million worth of property. And then that kind of started the ball rolling. And I've had, like, again, I always had help, though. I always had help from other departments, too, because I was very well accepted. And that is a huge plus. Everybody really was good to me when I started. And it makes all the difference in the world.
Did you do any other kind of plainclothes type of work or undercover besides that?
Yeah, I did all the massage parlors. I did the undercover massage parlors in town. So for 4 square miles, we had 22 massage parlors. So I did those. And at the time, I was about 100 pounds heavier. And I said, geez, I can't believe no one's passed this word around that there's a short, fat little ball guy going around doing all this. But they didn't. And that was pretty good. And so.
I'm almost afraid to ask what were the crimes being committed.
Well, obviously, it was, how about this? Deriving support for prostitution. That's what we charged the people in charge with. And then the woman we got services through human trafficking divisions. Actually, we work with the FBI on a lot of the cases.
So, okay, I mean, it could have been drug dealing out of there too, but
yeah, no, mostly, but it was prostitution at the time.
So the proverbial happy endings were being delivered, and
that's it. Yes, sir.
Your job is to go in there and disappoint a lot of guys that were customers coming in after you.
Yes. You know what? You know how many people have called me and said, knock it off? Guys that called her, I said, you got to be kidding me. I mean, they put it in the paper and they'd be like, come on, man, can you just leave a couple alone? But we did a big hit there.
Was it only the women and the owners arrested, or were some Johns or customers also arrested?
Actually, we only arrested a few of the women. Most of them actually were being kind of held in, certainly against their will, which is an epidemic right now. And but we did really we used a lot of resources there for the women and tried to get them taken care of. And then we prosecuted a lot of the people that would manage it, like if you called them the pimps or whatever it was, who were taking all the support and all the proceeds.
Dang, 22 of them right in your kind of bedroom community. No pun intended there, I guess.
Yeah, right. And then I actually did it for other towns too. Like one day we did 2 in a row, and I'm like, geez, what kind of guy goes for a massage? He's already pre-oiled. So I was oiled up for the first one. I went into the second one. I said, this has got to be a problem when I go in here. It's like, oh my goodness. So, but it flew. It ended up working.
I guess they don't care.
No, no, the money was green. That's what it was.
The money was great. That's fantastic.
I can see Ray going out tomorrow and volunteering to the local PDs.
Yeah.
Check out your massage parlors.
Yeah. No, that was it.
Do that, Jim.
No, we worked a lot of good cases. And again, at the time, we were part of an organization, we still are, called NEMLEC. So it's the Northeast Massachusetts Law Enforcement Council. And when I went in there, again, the person who ran the meetings his name was Jimmy Pierce from Winchester PD. He's retired now. He had 1 million years on then. And it wasn't like, hey, here's a new kid from Watertown, doesn't really know much. I didn't know anything. But, I was friendly enough, and they took me right in, and they helped me out on a lot of things, and I got lucky. And we ended up working cases together. And there was, again, this is just like the VDOC Society. You know what I mean? There are no egos there. Everybody just wanted to get the job done. There was nothing like put my name in the poor report, give me credit. It was fantastic. Everybody worked together, and we did our own thing. We created our own task forces, kind of like just go work for the day. We used to do a day in the life. So if we were going to follow you, a day in the life of Jimmy Fitz, go follow him out for the day. And we didn't have the resources to do what we wanted to do in one department. So we'd all just kind of make our own schedule and work with each other. And it worked fantastic. But those guys are gone now. I'm kind of like, I really am the last one of that whole crew that's left. And I'm hanging on with dear life, trying for something to come back. And they just told me the other day, brother, it is not coming back. So that's it. Time for chapter 2,
I hear you.
Yeah.
Well, here's something with you that not a lot of cops or detectives or police officers get the opportunity to do, and that's work background investigations.
Yeah.
When did you first start working those? And did you see a difference in officers as things were kind of moving forward in years?
Yeah. So going back to that, so when I got the job, say there was over 300 of us from Watertown who took the test for 2 positions. After that, we started dwindling down and dwindling down now for people who wanted the job. So when we started doing background investigations at the beginning, my age bracket, when I was doing it, I was still fairly close with someone who was still trying to get the job, or maybe someone of their brothers or things like that. Now we're doing their children. It's their kids that are coming up, things like that. So their backgrounds are very, very different. So with us, it was we'd go to the high school and we go to maybe a college, and that was it. That's as far as we went because everybody wanted the job so young. Now the people are getting the jobs that are older, and we are seeing a lot of past experience in other positions other than just out of high school, out of college, want to be a cop. So when you're doing things here, you're checking with other companies, or they've lived in other places, so they've done a lot with that. The other one is several of them have gone in the service, so they've been in the military. So we're checking with the military there. Where my crew really just got out and just started taking exams as soon as we were old enough to take them. We were going to Maine, New Hampshire, anywhere we could to get the job. The goal was to be in Watertown, and luckily the majority of us got it. But we were doing whatever we could to get it. But as far as the backgrounds goes, I think that their experience is getting a little more different than what we had.
What's the recruiting process then versus now? Is it easier? Are you getting younger, or it sounds like you're getting a lot of older?
Yeah, so they're either very young and taking the job, or they're much older and they've had other jobs who decided to be police officers. So going back to then, when we were getting on, there was no recruitment. Everybody just wanted it, and it was people banging the door down to get the job. It was, you were getting a 99 on the exam and praying that you'd even get on in the top 10 in the list with a 99 or 100. Now you're getting 74s and 75s, and the police departments are getting to, not just us, it's everybody in general, because so little people are taking the test now to get in, which what you're seeing now is a lot of departments are dropping the civil service protection. So you'll see, hey, you'll hear so-and-so just came out of civil service, or this town just came out of civil service. And what happens now at that point is, I guess if you could almost make an analogy, you kind of make your own fantasy football team. So you could pick anyone from each department, and now you can just apply to a police department as if you're applying to a regular position versus taking a test for that town, getting on a list for that town. It kind of frees you up a little bit to be more marketable.
What before you go, Jim, what does that mean, civil service, for our listeners?
Go
ahead.
So civil service protection it was a civil service exam that we would take to get on a list. And how it would go is you would take the test and you'd be on a residence preference, we'd call it, for the town that you lived in. And then you would pick 3 other towns that you'd like to work for. So I'm in Watertown. I would get residence preference for working in Watertown, but everybody always picked Boston. But either with 99 or 100, you'd be over 1,800, 1,400, because so many people in Boston would take it. You'd pick neighboring towns. But most towns would get their own people from their own city or town because we were always hiring. It was just always something that was going. We had a list. So now civil service protection was, if the police officer got the job, he was protected under civil service protection, where, God forbid, there was an incident or something, you'd have protection for your job, and you'd get to have the opportunity to have a civil service hearing. They also monitored the promotions. So civil service would administer the promotional exams. They would be done, and everything would be posted on top. And the idea was to kind of make everything fair. And if there was an issue of nepotism or whatever it was to remove that problem. So now, that really hasn't been a problem for a long time. And if you give up civil service, it's not that, really, for the most part, it's not that you need it for all the protection and things like that, because most guys don't do anything wrong. It was just to try to make it a little easier now for hiring. And it was a bargaining chip, really, is what it was in contracts.
Dave, going back a little bit, but also bringing it to the present, where did you do your academy training? What was that like? What are the recruits doing now, or even walk us through over the last several decades?
So I went to the academy. We used to call them MPOCs, Municipal Police Officer Academy. So I was in the 7th MPOC out of Norwood, Massachusetts. So we would drive daily from Watertown to Norwood. It's about a half an hour. And I had 43 in my class. We went down there, and a lot of us still friends today. And we were from all over, from environmental police to college. We started every day with PT. hardcore, and it was always, build us up, break us down, build us up, break us down, and everybody was start at zero. Now it's more of a kind of gentle approach. A lot of that insulting and berating and hazing, I guess they called it hazing, but it really wasn't. It was just to try to get you ready, is gone. So I don't know. I think you see a little difference of it. I mean, at the point now, you knew why they were doing it. It was when you came in, who had different levels that were in there. So I had years in the police department as a dispatcher. Someone was this, someone was a construction worker. It was to make everybody start at zero, really, at the day one, and was team building, and they did it, and it worked. At least I thought, but now things are a little different.
Dave, in Pennsylvania and some other states, people now can put themselves through private
Yep.
police academies. They're kind of, supervised or under the tutelage of the state, certainly in Pennsylvania, and they can come out, and that's a big plus to a PD who wants to hire them. They may still take these civil service tests or the equivalent, but they can basically start on day one. Obviously, they'd be with a training officer, things like that. Is that in Massachusetts also? Do they have that option?
Yeah, we actually had people who do that. They would work for like near Cape Cod in Massachusetts. They would have summer police. They would have things like that where you could work. So if you work for the summer, the city or town would support you or kind of vouch for you to go through a full-time academy. Sometimes they would pay for it. Sometimes the recruits would pay for it themselves just to say they were academy trained, as you said. And it was to make them more marketable. So if you took an exam and you, I, and Ray are tied for number 2, and they're hiring 3 people. Well, I'm academy trained, so that gives me a bump. EMT gets a bump, whatever, but here I am already academy trained, and it saves them the time. Not only the money, it saves them the time, because as you know, you may hire a police officer today, but you don't get him actively working on this, him or her, close to a year on the street before you have someone really covering a route. So it's a big, big weight.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You had this interest in forensics.
Oh, yeah.
Well, tell us how that came about, Dave.
Actually, I'd like to tell you about that. So he's actually from your job, Charlie Walsh from the FBI. Another legend there. 1986. I'm there. I'm working for the Department of Defense Police in Watertown at the Army Arsenal Barracks. And this guy comes in with glasses and the tie and everything. He starts teaching me about arches, loops, and whirls. And from then on, we stayed friends straight through. I took every class he had 2, 3, 4 times at a time. And we made a joke. I think I'm president of your fan club, but Charlie taught me a lot of the old school ways of doing things. I mean, from burning camphor to get prints on a dark surface and magnesium and things like that to the current best practices that were there. And he was a very big plus in letting me know about the body farm down in Tennessee, the National Forensic Academy. So I applied for that position and I tried to get in. I constantly tried to get in. And to be honest with you, I told them my police department already supported it. They were behind it 100%. They didn't even know about it. I was doing whatever I could to get a spot, and I had a spot penciled in, and then I went and sold myself to the chief, and he let me go. And we spent 10 weeks in Tennessee. And after that, it was straight on. And then I was able to go to Quantico for a few classes and things. And that's why I consider myself so fortunate. I appreciate it because I work for a small department where you don't get these opportunities to do that. And when I was in Quantico, once you go to a department, as you guys know from the FBI, when the FBI would sponsor someone from a local police department, you'd get to do 2 weeks. And then you'd have to wait another whole year before anyone would be eligible again from that department. Well, when I was in there, they had a code blue at Quantico, and it was the academy was closed for a huge snow blizzard when I was there in Virginia. So they called me and they say, look, the academy's closed. We can't get you back. Do you want to stay for another session of series of classes? Of course. So I was able to stay in Jefferson. I was the only guy there for the whole weekend by myself. Nobody in the academy at all. I was like doing a B&E in Quantico. I was in there myself, and then I ended up staying for 2 weeks. So I really think I was fortunate in that respect. So that's how the forensics took off, through Charlie, training, and then experience.
Dave, was that time frame around January of '96?
No, I was 2010 when I was at Quantico.
Oh,
wow!
I was the only person in the academy.
Oh, no kidding.
Big snowstorm in January of '96, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe we could have.
Yep.
We met in the boardroom, just the two of us that night.
There you go.
But
yeah.
that was later. Okay. Fascinating career. And when you say forensics, of course, that covers a lot.
Yep.
It does.
Was there one particular specialty of yours in that regard that you
Well,
focused on down the line?
yeah. So here's what happened. So when we started NEMLEC, they were making specialty units. They were making a dive team. They had the rapid response team. They had all that, and then they come up with a crime scene unit, and we had to put in for it. And there was 12 or 15 people to do it, and we had two like 12-foot command vans, and they're loaded with crime scene equipment. Luckily, with the training that I had, Watertown was lucky enough to get one, and North Andover, Massachusetts, got the other. Kevin Burke at the time was a guru on fingerprints at the time. Another guy who really schooled me, old time guy, and he really schooled me. Took his time with me, and I learned so much from these guys. So when we had the truck, now because we were with NEMLEC, I would go to other departments and do crime scenes for them, like Arlington, and we do bank robberies, we do here and there. So I was getting not only the experience from Watertown, if we were very quiet for a time, we weren't certainly not like LA. We're not busy, at times, but we had enough to keep us busy. But if there was nothing going on in Watertown, I would be working with other detectives doing crime scenes, which was a double plus because I was networking as well. And as you both know, a detective is only as good as his network. So I had the network, I had the resources, and I was picking up experience as I was going along, and I was making mistakes as I went, or learning as I was making mistakes in smaller level crimes. So when bigger things happened, I was lucky enough to have the ability to, maybe apply a lot. I certainly don't know everything, but I always say I know enough to be dangerous, but I do. If I don't know the answer, I know who to call to get it. So that was the answer.
Ray, when we started in the FBI, and certainly me 11 years before as a police officer, and Dave, it sounds like you too, we were all expected to be, if not experts, certainly really good in all the stuff you just described.
Yeah.
Fingerprints and crime scene analysis, doing the old sketches and with the measuring tapes and all that stuff, not to mention accident investigation reports. And then it seems like in about the early 90s or so, and certainly through the 90s, a lot of departments say we need to get specialists to do this. And the FBI, I guess it was maybe early 90s, Ray, the ERT was formed, Evidence Response Team. And I know a lot of other departments started doing that then of course the cross training. And now I'm sure agents, I hope they still know how to go into a bank and sprinkle the dust and pick up, fingerprints. But in most cases, they probably call the divisional ERT or like what you described, Dave, in your department that covered actually multiple agencies. So it's a good way to go. And crime scenes now are better investigated and analyzed because of the specialized training that you just described.
And that was the big thing when you talk about that in the 90s there. The EIT and the local police departments worked together all the time. So if we would have a bank robbery, you get to know the people that were working there, certainly because the Boston field office would come out with us. And if I was there or working with people that was down, we would already start the process, have the witnesses going, things like that. And then we'd work it as a joint investigation. And there was never a territorial issue. You know what I mean? As you know, there's always like that ongoing joke, whatever. I never experienced that with the FBI. I worked great with them when we worked a lot of cases, and their resources were endless. So if we called to work a case, we would, because we worked together, wasn't like, if we called, it wasn't like, hey, this guy's just wasting our time, whatever. So that was a good thing too, because we had a good respect for each other, and that's how things happened. And then when they had the bank robbery task force, they used a lot of TFOs from other towns and cities that would work along with FBI agents. So everybody worked together on a lot of things, and that's what made it worthwhile. And then having that little bit of experience doing things with cases, and then we develop informants. We're working together with them, and everyone trusted each other. It really worked out well. We made some good progress, a lot of good progress.
It's funny, but being on the bank robbery fugitive squad in Philadelphia, we were expected to lift prints, to dust for prints, do all those things. And in '92, they actually sent me to Quantico for training for the evidence response team to kind of start that team.
Yeah.
And I started that team, but it was a collateral duty. And with doing the profiling and doing the hostage negotiation and SWAT, all those things, I just didn't have time, so I handed that off. But I kind of kept my hand in a little bit. But I want to back up just a second here, Dave, because you mentioned arch, loop, and whirls. And what he, for our listeners, what he's talking about the different impressions on a finger that people leave behind. And then you're able to identify them it's almost down to a science. And then you talked about the body farm down in Tennessee or down in Alabama, or that's the bombing school, but down in Tennessee, the body farm.
Yep.
And that is really the ability to be able to recover bodies in different areas and the different stages of decomposition. Just so
Correct.
people know what that is. But Dave, you do have a specialty, and if you could explain what it is, blood stain pattern analysis.
Yep.
If you
So
could explain to us what that is, so our listeners kind of like a first grader could understand it, because
sure. No,
I really
absolutely.
don't know what it is.
No, absolutely. And again, I hate to sound like a broken record here, but again, I was trained by another legend, Paulette Sutton. I mean, she's written all the books and stuff on bloodstain pattern analysis and things like that. And I had her for in Tennessee when we were down there, and for the body decomposition, I had Arpad Vass. He's world renowned. So that's the thing. The trainers down there, they were the best of the best who trained us, and that's where I think we got a lot of advantage. But with bloodstain pattern analysis specifically, people hear a lot about the DNA on TV. They're hearing about all this stuff. They're working cases. They're hearing things like this and whatever on DNA. Well, the difference between DNA and BPA, but bloodstain pattern analysis, is actually it's a big difference, because DNA will tell you who it is. It will tell you, was a person involved, not involved, and it exonerates a lot of people as much as it includes people into cases. So it's a great thing. And gone are the days where lawyers can say that, hey, on a Tuesday, it's the greatest thing in the world, DNA, because it got his client off. And then Thursday, he gets a new case with a DNA case against him. He can't say it's junk science anymore, so they can't go after the science anymore. They can only go after us. So this is where the collection and having the training and when you're doing these things come into play, and it's very serious. Gone are the days, hey, I tried. You have to know better now. But specifically with bloodstain pattern analysis, what that'll tell you is, with DNA, you see this blood at the scene, or you see a reddish brown stain, which we do test for to go with letter to see that it's blood. But it'll tell you the type of sequence that may have happened. Was a person robbed and assaulted, or assaulted and robbed? How many people were involved? The type of assault that may have happened. Is it, we get away now from saying high velocity and low velocity and things like that. But, if it's a close, God forbid, it's a bullet. Is it a close range? Is it far away? Is it a high powered rifle? Is it a gun? These are all things that are done with bloodstain pattern analysis. And what it is we can take, if you take bloodstain patterns that's on a wall, and you'll see multiple stains that are on there. It's a mathematical formula that we use. We divide the width by the length of the stain, and then you get the degree of the angle. When you start doing that, you run the chords down, run the strings down, and wherever the strings seem to cross, that's what we call the area of convergence. That's where you think where the person may or should probably have been standing, or where they were positioned. So now when you get a story, not only do you don't just take it now and run with the story, you work it from both sides. You never, as you guys know, you don't get a theory and try to make the evidence fit the theory. You take the evidence and it tells you what the story is. Now you go back to what you're at, and the person is where they're claiming, whether it be an eyewitness or a suspect or a victim, whatever it is. We can kind of put things back with bloodstain pattern analysis. So on a real elementary description, the bloodstain will tell us a story as to which way the blood was traveling, where the origin was, the direction of travel, the amount of force, and sequence of events, things like that. How many offenders? Was the victim injured or not? If they're round stains, sometimes those are from the actual suspect, because if the victim's moving and thrashing around trying to protect themselves, they may be angular. The suspect is standing, he may have 90-degree drops just by standing there and looking, all different things like that. And it just gives you an array of things that were never available before.
Wow.
Dave, I didn't hear you once use the term blood spatter.
Yeah.
Is that still within the jargon or nomenclature of this science?
Yeah, that's spatter. And we always say, there's actually T-shirts that say it's spatter and not splatter. That's the whole thing. You hear it on a lot of these shows, the blood splatter. It's not splatter, it's spatter, blood spatter.
And that's why I was very clear.
Yeah.
If people listening and watching this learn nothing else, if you hear a so-called expert on TV say splatter talking about blood, they got it wrong, and they're probably
it happens. It actually happens.
It certainly does.
You're like, oh my goodness, yeah.
What I also know about the Tennessee Body Farm is, and we don't have to get too much into detail here, but you got to have kind of a strong stomach, and I'm sure you're warned up front what you're going to see. And there are people who donate their bodies, for different reasons, remove organs, things like that. Some say, okay, forensic scientist, you can have my body, and put me in the ground and put a camera on me and let the bugs get to me. But there's a whole science about what
Right.
bugs, insects, and specifically maggots do to a body, and you can tell so much, from the time of death and other factors
Sure.
involved. And of course, weather kicks in too. So it is truly a science. I can talk about it. I can broach the subject, but I mean, I would never testify in court. I knew back in the day who to turn to
Yep.
if that was the area of interest that I knew would help on a case. So yeah, a lot of credit to you and others that really devoted their professional career to attaining the degrees and what have you in that science. So I don't know if we're getting too far ahead here, but how much of that came into play, Dave, in April of 2013?
I have one question before you go there, Dave.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, Did you have the opportunity to go to the bomb school in Alabama?
No,
No.
we
Right.
did a week of bombs in Tennessee, and going back to what Fitz just said, when I was we were in that, we did a week of bombs, we did arson, we did all this bullet trajectory stuff, whatever. And I'm saying, okay, I'm in Watertown, Massachusetts. All right, we do our calls, we get our armed robberies, we get things like that. When am I ever going to deal with a freaking bomb ever? And then we have the marathon explosion. So when we do
Walk us. Well, all right, I'll let you finish, but walk us
no,
through that day where you were. You get a call, your cell phone goes off, but tell us,
yeah.
Finish what you're
No,
saying.
just real quick. I mean, I teach crime scene all over the country now, doing these kind of things. And I had a class just a month and a half ago in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, real quick. And we were teaching long distance photos, if you have to take 100 yards or more in photos using depth of field and things like that. The student that took the class worked for the New Jersey Parks Department, and he tells me, he goes, "Man, I never took this camera out of the bag. I've never used it before in my life." And that was on a Monday. On Friday, he left. 5 days later, the following Wednesday, he sends me a message. He was a lead photographer in that tragic accident when the two Philly news reporters were killed in a helicopter crash.
Yes.
He goes, "Hey, I was a lead photographer in this class. I can't thank you enough for the training I had, and and all that stuff." And he's saying, he's going, "Hey, I work for the Parks Department. Like, when am I ever going to need to do something like this?" And here he is 5 days after leaving, this happens. But all that came from everything I learned in Tennessee doing the photos there. I had the best instructors, John Williams and Kerry McCleary. They taught me about photography, and I kept with it. But on that day when we got the call, I'll never forget it. It was the 19th of April, and I got a phone call about it was like 1:45, 2 o'clock in the morning. They call me. The lieutenant at the time, Mike Lawn, who became chief, calls me up. Now, he had been calling me in for 20 years, calling me for call outs and things like that. And my daughter, who was in the room, had a little side phone in her room. And every night, if I got called in at night, she'd pick the phone up and listen to the call, and then hang up, and then I'd leave. It was just, she always listened. That night, even she knew the tone was different. They call me up and says, "Hey, man, you got to get down here now. McClellan's in a shootout. We have an MIT officer that's been killed. There's still smoke everywhere." It was going nuts. So I flew down there, and it really was like, it was controlled chaos. You could not park a vehicle anywhere.
And let's back up a bit, and
Yep.
better than anyone. I believe the 15th was the day of the
Yep.
two bombings. Walk us through what you know of that, and certainly our audience.
So that was Boston's investigation, that we went there, and other departments. So again, that actually took a big play into what happened on our response, because on that Monday, the 15th, when the bombs went off about 10 minutes to 3 in the afternoon, there was multiple police there anyway. We had medical people, and simply for the marathon itself, because they were there. When those bombs went off, every police department was calling around, what can we do to help? They were self-deploying. There was all that stuff happening. So I actually called one of the ATF agents that I know, and I say, "Hey, look, are you looking for anybody that's post-blast trained? Because I'm assuming you're looking for people like that." Everybody was talking to people, but it took a while because all the phones were shut down right afterwards. You couldn't get calls in or out of anywhere in the city. So it was difficult to speak to people when we got there. After that happened, and they got things under control on the 15th between the state police and Boston and all their specialized units and the FBI, all the other departments certainly had their eyes open for days later. When we started getting information that night, So it was just late on the Thursday night into that Friday when that happened. So it was 1:46 in the morning. They called us up about what's going on. But at the time, the police officers there thought they had two carjackers. They didn't know they had the Boston Marathon bombers. So they get down that these guns are going off. There's multiple rounds going on a side street, Laurel Street in Watertown. Very, very small street. Everybody knows everybody. And then when they started throwing what we found out later to be pipe bombs and then a pressure cooker, I mean, when they saw the bombs going off, it wasn't too hard to put together who we had at the time. At least the officers who were there. I was not there at the initial spot.
Now, let me ask you, was it a vehicle jacking or a carjacking?
There was a vehicle jacking. Carjacking is the crime. Vehicle jacking is the way to understand it. So, yes.
All right, just
Yeah.
check.
And that's how that happened.
But there were two people killed, I think, very shortly at the bombings. The two pressure cooking devices that went off, the IEDs, improvised explosive devices, on Monday afternoon. The beautiful day, the marathon. It happens every year, Patriots Day in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And then this happens. And a total of 17 people lost limbs.
There's 3 killed, and there was like almost 280 something injured, and multiple people lost limbs. It was mayhem.
Well, and I wasn't sure I forget the number killed at the scene.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But I know Sean Collier was the Massachusetts Institute of Technology police officer who confronted the brothers.
Yep.
We don't use names on this show, but two brothers and Eastern European background, and they tried to get his weapon. An assault occurred, and Officer Collier was killed on or near the campus, I believe.
Yes.
And again, they didn't even know then that it was the bombers yet, I don't believe. Am I correct?
No, because the car was carjacked after that. And then the victim was speaking to the Cambridge police. He reported that to Cambridge police, who responded to that gas station. And Cambridge is an unbelievable police department. We work with them daily. I mean, we have a great relationship with Cambridge, and they put that out that a car was carjacked at the time, and it was 30 minutes old at the time when the call went out when we went there. And then they were able to determine through the tracking of the Mercedes where the car was. They notified Watertown. We have a radio system called BAPERN, which stands for Boston Area Police Emergency Radio Network. So we could talk to each other from city to city very easily. And they said, hey, Watertown, we get this cars pinging in the area of 61 Dexter Avenue. And Dexter Ave is off of Mount Auburn Street, which Mount Auburn Street goes right into Harvard Square into Cambridge. So they told us it was there. The police officer goes down there, Joe Reynolds. And Joe, if you had to put a title of a cop's cop, you would put that on Joe Reynolds' name. Joe was one of the most solid, best guys, I mean, inside and out, just a salt of the earth guy. He sees the car. He says, hey, I see them here. You want me to stop it? They say, yeah. Joe makes the stop. He activates the lights, and they just come out blasting. So he certainly wasn't expecting that.
And he blasted back, and I forget if he was hit or not, but he at least survived that.
Yeah, he did survive. He put the car in reverse. He went backwards to try to get out of there. He gets out, and he fires back. Another officer, one of the sergeants, shows up. John McClellan shows up. People started self-deploying because people were getting out of work. We had detail officers, like private security detail officers at a local, at the Perkins School for the Blind, actually. They were there on a midnight to 6 shift. So they hear the calls coming in. People are starting to hear this. So what happened was we were inundated with police very shortly after because there were so many in the city already ready to go because of what happened on the 15th. So there's no traffic at that time. We are literally 5 miles away. And these guys are hearing the calls for shots fired, and everybody starts firing out. So we had thousands of police officers in a very, very short period of time.
Which sometimes could be problematic, especially if some of them are in plain clothes.
Yeah.
Friendly fire, and no one wants to get hurt in that regard. So, yeah, that's an amazing story. Continue.
No, so everyone wanted to help, and so they were dealing with issues, certainly with communication. So if we were getting calls, and our 911 center, I think, took over 500 calls at that time when the shots started getting fired. So here it is. It's 1:45 in the morning on a quiet night, and there's multiple gunshots going off. Everybody's calling 911. We have two dispatchers that work that shift, and it's called a PSAP, a public safety answering point. What happens is when the calls start flying in, if you get too many, it immediately forwards to Newton Police or to another local police department. These guys were trying to answer all the calls that were coming in, letting people know what's going on. When that's happening, they're calling on the radio. The officers are calling on the radio saying, hey, we got shots fired here, and I think they're throwing explosives. Police departments are responding, hearing that on our radios. But when they get there, we can't talk. You could be 10 feet away from me, but I can't talk to you by radio. And you're getting calls for, hey, a woman hearing someone screaming on Cypress Street. A woman's hearing this, or someone's calling this. But you can't use these officers to dispatch them to these calls because they don't know where the address is. And they don't even know the calls are coming in. So the communication was a problem then. If there's any good thing that came out of this horrific incident was that the trainings that we've had since then and the abilities to work and talk with each other has been tenfold. I mean, we've worked on this now so many times. The after action report came out and things like that, but it was a lot of difficulty there because we were trying to set up a staging area. We were trying to do all these kind of things, control evidence. Evidence control was certainly a problem. And then we had jurisdictional issues. Is it local, state, federal? Who's taking it? The FBI took, the bombing. So what's happening now? Well, they weren't there at the time. Local was here. The state police were here because we worked hand in hand together at the time. There was a lot going on at the thing. And then when you had one of the suspects were killed and the second one took off, now we had a second crime scene up the street. So now we're deploying officers to that scene and we're still trying to control the first one. So it got to be kind of involved, and you had police coming from everywhere.
So does the older brother, the one that was killed, was he killed at that initial scene?
Yes. That
he engaged with the initial officer?
Yes, he got into a firefight with Jeff Pugilis, who was a sergeant in Watertown. He got in a firefight with him, all the officers, and him and Jeff were kind of shooting at each other. And then the brother took off in the stolen Mercedes and went down the street, did a U-turn. Instead of just taking off, he came back, did a U-turn, and he started driving directly towards the two officers who were trying to handcuff his brother. So he started racing towards the two officers. The two officers broke away seconds before the car came up, and they missed being run over. And the brother ran over his own brother and dragged him and actually hit the first cruiser that Joe Reynolds was driving. So when Joe backed up, he backed up into a telephone pole and stopped there and started firing back. When the Mercedes came, picked up his brother in the vehicle, dragged him. He struck that parked car that was already parked up against the telephone pole and took off and went to the connecting route, which is called Spruce Street. Drove straight up the street and took off. And then he left the vehicle at the corner of Lincoln Street.
So the older brother runs over the younger brother?
Younger brother runs over the older brother.
Older brother, okay.
Yeah.
Right. Just make sure we're clear.
And basically, cause of death was by the brother driving that car over him.
Yeah, and he was
shot
shot
by a vehicle. But
yeah, he was shot and run over. That's the way that call went out for the medical.
So then brother number 2 is MIA for a day or two, I believe.
It was like about 19 hours.
Okay,
so
about a day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got to get down to 19, yeah.
And remind me, was that Watertown or where I know he's eventually found in a boat.
Yeah, he was found on 67 Franklin Street, actually in Watertown.
Interesting.
So it's all within multiple blocks of each other. He was found inside a boat right after we released the shelter in place. We released the shelter in place. The gentleman went out back to kind of have a cigarette and stretch his legs, and he sees a ladder up against his boat. He looks over, what's that? He looks in, and then it went from there.
Well, tell us about that.
Okay. So the shelter in place was lifted. It was around 6 o'clock at night, and we were talking. And actually, there were high-ranking officers from Boston Police there as well. And there was a tip that came in that he may actually be in Dartmouth at his college. So they were trying to make a determination, was there going to be a team to go there back to the school to try to find him or not? While we were all talking about that, taking off your vests, doing whatever, kind of settling down, we had been there for multiple hours. A call comes in over our police radios. Again, so the communication. We're sitting there with cops police from multiple departments, and I can hear it over my radio because that's where the call went out. The shelter in place is lifted. Gentleman goes outside in the back, looks at his boat. He sees a ladder up against the boat, walks over, he looks in, and he goes, what the hell's going on here? Lifts up it was shrink wrapped in white plastic. He looks inside, he sees blood all over it, and he sees a body in the boat. he runs back in and calls the station and says, "This is what I got." And at that point, when that call got out, everybody knew exactly what it was. And we were seconds away. I would think I was the third person there. I teamed up with a fellow officer who I've been with for years, Charlie Samios. We took a set at the stairs, and we were just yards away from the boat. And then started coming in. And believe it or not, his name was Dave Henneberry. He was a great guy. Everybody knew him. He was a member of the Watertown Yacht Club. And when he called, his big concern when the police went into his house to say, "Hey, you got to get out of here," was that his wife was actually dying of cancer upstairs on the second floor.
Boy.
He didn't want to leave the house because he's trying to say, "My wife's upstairs." And we're all like, "Get out of the house." And he's trying to explain to us what's going on. So it was a little hectic there. But then we immediately surrounded the boat, and then the capture came later.
I thought you were going to say. I thought you were going to say the guy didn't want any holes put in his boat because
No, actually, here's another thing. Because there was so many holes put in his boat as a result of the gunfire, the company, what I'm told, actually gave him another boat. And he said, "You know what? Why don't you hold off?" And he donated the money to the One Fund. So It was really, he's just a super guy. He's since passed as well. And but just a really, really good guy.
So what is that? What fund was that? The One Fund?
The One Fund. They put it in there. It was a fund started up for the victims and people that were involved in it in Boston. He said, "Hey, you know what? Why don't you give it over there?" And the guy loved his boat. That was the big thing. He loved the boat.
So Dave, walk us through. Okay, you got somebody in a boat. You're 99.9% sure that this is your guy. Go ahead.
Let's be clear here. The boat is on a trailer out of the water.
Oh, yes. There you
It's
go.
elevated a few feet, I guess.
Elevated in the backyard.
Yep. So it's not anywhere near water, at least not floating.
Right.
So now continue.
It's actually on a side street in Watertown, and the houses are very, very close. I mean, our houses are so close in the town. I mean, that's the kind of the running joke. They say, "Hey, what do you want out of life?" I said, "I want to be able to open both doors at one time and not hit my neighbor's bushes." That's the big thing. And so that's how close it is. But his boat is in the backyard. It is on a trailer, and it's shrink wrapped. It's April, so he's probably getting ready to go into the water, and it's a tight area. The street comes down and it bends, and it's a very tight spot to put police cars or put anybody there. So when we come down, we park the cars in the street, and we immediately surround that boat. Everyone goes around it. They're doing whatever, and we had guys on the roofs. We had guys in people's houses shooting, tasered on them, lasered on them, and we immediately surrounded that boat. Shortly after we get there, again, I was one of the first people that were there. We went around it. We heard this popping noise right away, immediately out of the boat, and we could see things being popped out of the shrink wrap. It looked like the end of a rifle. What I think now is that I think he heard all that commotion. He certainly heard all the police radios. He heard all these things coming out of play. We were surrounding the boat. He couldn't see us. He's inside the shrink wrap boat. I think what he found was something inside that boat poking holes so he could see what was happening, because there was a flap in the front of the boat, and I saw him poke his head right out of the boat. And that's one of the issues that was with the Charlie Samios next to me. Something had happened somewhere that somebody saw something, and then rounds were fired shortly afterwards. And then we started to see smoke coming out of the back of the boat. Then they used the chopper above that they could see with the flare. It's called a forward-looking infrared device, so you can see the body inside, and they could see from the heat that he was moving around and that he was there. A decision was made to, now they took an armored vehicle with a big piece front on it and started taking the shrink wrap off the boat so we could see inside the boat. And then they shot a couple of flashbangs in there to kind of distract him a little bit. And then they ordered him out, and he was taken into custody.
So he came out on his own. There was no shots fired.
There were shots fired beforehand, but there was no shots fired at him. And he came out. He was actually sitting he had one leg teetered over the boat and one leg inside the boat, and he was kind of sitting there for a while. And he was moving back and forth, and they were talking to him to come over. And then one of the SWAT teams came up. They grabbed him. They pulled him down on the boat, and they cuffed him right in front. And we took him out of there.
That was an amazing week. And Ray, I know we were talking on and off, of course. I guess you were still in the bureau then.
I was. I was at the back end.
Yep.
And I remember being retired about 5 years at that point, and that was the first time watching that week unfold. I told a few people around me, my sons and others who would listen, I now wish I was back in the bureau. I
Oh,
would
yeah.
want to be a profiler, a linguist, someone on the scene at the task force. I didn't have to be right there,
Yeah.
guns out or all that. I certainly would have been glad to be a part of that. But and it was so nice. I'll never forget. I'll never forget that night when it all finally ended. I think we were at a bar with some friends watching a basketball game. Headlines, everything's broken. Boston, marathon shooter finally captured or whatever, and no one else was hurt. And the rounds of applause in the bar, and the
Yeah.
Boston folks applauding police as they went by, and it's so different. I'm not saying so much in Boston, but in other parts of the country, everyone hates the police, and
Yeah.
all cops are bastards, all that stuff. But I think for that week, and certainly for a time afterwards, the whole Boston metropolitan area was so alive with appreciation for what the combined forces, federal, state, local, including Watertown PD and Dave McNeil as one part of the team, and how that came to an end with only Sean Collier's life, the MIT officer, having
Yeah.
lost it then. But
It really was wild that nobody else was hurt that night, and I
yeah,
would tell you, and I've told Ray in the past too. It was a horrific. It's tragedy. No other way around it. It was a tragedy all the way around. Both events, whatever, and everything that came from was a tragedy, and why it even happened was a tragedy. But if it did anything, the police in the area, we were already close already. I mean, you couldn't get any tighter at that point. I mean, everybody was working together at the time. I mean, you had every three-lettered agency in the back. There was pictures taken. You see ATF, DEA, FBI, Watertown Police, State Police, New Hampshire State Police, Manchester Police. I mean, I think the Virginia State Police were there. Like it was wild, And at the point, it didn't matter, man. You could have been head of the FBI, and I'm 2 months out of the academy, and we were side by side, and everybody was working together. It was a good thing for a horrific ending, and the people in the street was something I've never seen in my entire life. I mean, it was wild. It was wild.
Dave, it is. It's I was still on the job, and I
Yep.
remember and now I didn't have anything personally to do with that. I was from afar, but I was so proud
Yeah.
to say that I'm a law enforcement officer,
Yes.
and that as a team, not this agency or that agency, but as a team, we were able to come together and work to bring a conclusion to this. And I saw that in Oklahoma City, where guys came together with that bombing. I see those in these big cases, and every time it happens, it brings us closer and closer together. You're so right, Dave. You're so
Right.
right.
You say that you said that word team. That's what happened. It wasn't like, hey, buddy, this is mine or this is yours. Some of it got a little bit like that, certainly in areas, because police are territorial anyway. That we are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the case. But at the end of the day, really, it didn't really matter, man. You were just somebody beside you, and everybody just wanted to get that job done. That's really what it was, and it was phenomenal. And when you look at the pictures now, and we study it years later, it really was a miracle that nobody else was hurt. I mean, for the rounds that were in there and the things that were taken, I mean, there was pipe bombs that were not exploded at the time that could have went off. I mean, it was just unbelievable. We had specialists from the ATF working with us straight back, and then the ATF stress team came in later, and the guy who was running the ATF stress team was a guy from Watertown High School. We went to school together. He retired as a director of the ATF. So it's like, you talk about the ironic part of how everything worked together. It was really something.
And to give closure to this case, there was a trial of the younger brother, federal trial, and he was in fact convicted and sentenced to death. There is still a death penalty in the U.S. district courts and what have you, the Department of Justice. And now, of course, he's fighting that on appeal. And I know Rolling Stone put him on the cover a few years ago,
that
make him look like Jim Morrison or something with his hair, and that but no surprise for Rolling Stone in that regard. I want to hear more about you too, Dave, in the present time. But since I was involved in kind of a well-known bombing case, a lot different than this one, how it went down, and then there was a mini series made years later. I'm sure you probably watched the movie Patriots Day with Mark Wahlberg and others. on the whole, how do you rate that in terms of getting things right?
Well, I'll be honest with you. They worked with the officers that were there to try to get a lot of the stuff, as real as it could. I mean, he actually drove. That was Jeff Pugley's van that he's really driving, his actual
Oh,
personal van and things like that that he did. The only thing that was off on it was like, they had rifles in there in the movie. There was no rifles in that fight, and that might have been a game changer at the time.
hmm.
It was everybody was using pistols and different things like that. But they did try to do things the way it was. Like when they showed the actual house on Franklin Street, that actually is his house. That's Dave's house. So they try to do a lot of stuff. Right down, we used to make fun of Jeff Pugley for the brown leather jacket that he wears. We're like, hey, man, where'd you get that jacket? When you see somebody wears a members only coat. You're the last member, but they actually found a leather coat. He wore the same brown leather coat and did whatever. And they became pretty friendly. So they tried to do a lot of the stuff of the background of the officers and things. The only thing that was different was the scene wasn't as nuts as that. Like there was no cars on fire and that kind of stuff. But there certainly was smoke in the air and there were explosions and things like that. But other than that, I think it was, they made this one character, Wahlberg, as like the kind of the guy running it, but that didn't happen.
Well, the composite character.
Yeah, sure.
They kind of
Yeah.
have to do that in Hollywood. I
Yeah.
certainly learned that in many ways, but I enjoyed the movie, and I've talked to some people said it's pretty darn close,
Yeah.
except for a few minor details. So,
Yeah.
and it certainly made, well deservedly, it made the police look good because they were good and they
Yeah.
did their jobs very heroically and very diligently over that whole week and everything, after that. So, yeah, an amazing thing to live through in a week or certainly a few days in a row. You'll never forget, no doubt about
No
that.
way. Yeah, no, and it was unbelievable, and like I said, and here we had just got the brand new police station a little bit before that. In September of 2010, we moved to a brand new police station. We used that facility during the event and throughout it. It was really something because we had an emergency operations center. We had the ability to talk to multiple departments. We had a big bay to process evidence. There was things like that in our old police station, we didn't have the ability to do it. So everything kind of worked out with the way we had to do what we had to do.
So, Dave, you're going to retire at the end of the month here.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And,
yeah.
No, you know what? The grass is greener on the other side.
Yeah.
It really is. It's tough to let go, but once you do, Dave, it's not bad. But what are your plans?
So I started my own company, McNeil Investigations and Forensic Consulting. So, like I said, I'm a PI. Yeah, we got it here. Yeah, Fitz mentioned it there. We're doing that. So I do crime scene training. I'm doing private investigations, and I'm working with some guys now. Tom McAndrews, one of them, all these kind of things. And so, I mean, I can't say enough about these guys. Steve Green from New York City, Brian O'Hara from the Mass State Police, another legend. And again, I'm still learning from that crew. So we're trying to put out that, look, it's not just a bunch of retired guys looking to make a couple of bucks. It's people who still really believe in this job and want to give you the best we possibly can do. And that's it. And then we're doing things now with innovative forensics. And then we started that innovative forensics doing the investigative genealogy. We're down there making some luck with that. And then 7 of us started this Chris McMullen. I know, Fitz, Chris started with Tom McAndrew and us, right? We started Cold Case. I shouldn't say we. They started it, and I'm kind of chugging along here. Cold Case Initiative. And the thing is, here we're all members of the VDOC Society. These officers come down and say, "Hey, what do you think?" And we'll say, "Hey, you should do this. You should do that." And they're like, "Great. Well, how do I get the money to do that?" So we started Cold Case Initiative to try to say, "Hey, look, it's a nonprofit, and we want to fund these things that you're trying to do for police departments." So if we get a $100 donation for Cold Case Initiative, we don't take out the admin fees or anything. You give $100 goes to that lab to get things processed. You know what I mean? So, and that's how it is. And that's how it is when they do the innovative forensics. They come in, they work the case from start to finish. And it's not just like, hey, we got this far, we need a couple of bucks. Hey, we need this. They finish it right to the end. If you call and you get somebody 2:00 in the morning, somebody answers the phone. That's the things we try to do. So I'm going to be doing that. I am amazed. If I could just take 1 second of being a member of the VDOC Society, it's just another whole world. And like you say, and like I was saying before, you talk about no egos. I mean, look, when I walk into that room, I'm a a street detective from the area of Boston, Massachusetts. And I'm working with guys like yourselves. I mean, some outstanding medical examiners, world-renowned investigators. And it's not like, hey, pal, go sit over there or do whatever. It's like, hey, how you doing? And you're welcomed in again. So what I was talking about before, when people tell me, buddy, it's never coming back, I think it did come back in the VDOC Society, because I'm welcomed in again, and I'm working with people my age who are still giving it 110%. And it's pro bono. And, it's not, we're not in it for the glory. No one's in it for this, and no one's looking for credit. They just want to solve cases. I mean, this is fantastic. So I can't say enough about it.
Yeah, we've mentioned Vidocq Society on this on Cold Red a few times, but just as a reminder, it's a Vidocq. He was a French investigator, actually a prisoner first. He went
Yeah.
to jail, came out, started helping the police, became a detective. He's considered the first real detective in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, Sherlock Holmes was fictional. Vidocq was real, and he became chief of the Paris police. So this nonprofit entity started in the late 80s by a few of the founding members. They're still involved. And all we do, we just try to solve cases. And it really helped me. I retired in 07 as a profiler in Quantico, and I'm now working cases again in 2008 in my hometown of Philadelphia. And it's so I never kind of completely moved away from all that I was doing. Of course, I do other stuff in the meantime, but it's nice that once a month. And Ray and I are both full members. And Dave, I know if you're not full, you're going to be soon.
I'm on the board, so I'm a full member on the board. I've been on the
There you
board.
go.
Yeah. So I mean, and that's that, and it's really it's unbelievable. And again, like Ray, when you were doing we were doing the webinars and things like that. It was never like, hey, pal, this was it. It was just welcome aboard, and I just can't say enough about it. So,
well, Dave, if I want to reach out to you,
yep,
and I want to use you to work a case for me, how the heck am I going to get a hold of you?
Or training, right?
Or training.
Yeah. The training the training we did that we've come up with, I think is pretty unique, because it's all hands on. It's not death by PowerPoint. You're not sitting there just listening and talking. You're doing it. So we're at McNeilPI.com, MacNeilPI.com. So McNeilPrivateInvestigator.com. The website's there. The training's on there. Things like that, and we work everything from. You take a look at it. We can work any case that you need, and we cover it all. And the thing is, again, I'm not trying to talk about myself here. It's very tough to talk about yourself. But the thing is, if we're going to give you an answer, whatever situation you have, if it's involving a violent crime or a sexual assault investigation, something, God forbid, we have someone, Steve Green, retired captain, SVU Manhattan, 24 years. I mean, that's the resource we have. If it's a missing person, cold case, homicide, whatever, I have Tom McAndrew, a legend in homicide work. Brian O'Hara, forensics, taught me with Charlie Walsh, all that stuff. I'm still learning from him, and he's in his 70s. We're going back and forth, and I just can't say enough. And we, Dr. David Keatley from Murdoch University, who's also a member, and he runs the post-presentation group. He's part of the team. And it's not like we're in business together. We're all just kind of working things together. If something comes in, we have a professional person to bounce your specific issue off of and try to give you the best possible answer we can. That's the goal.
Now, the other thing, too, you mentioned the cold case initiative.
Yep.
I'm out there and I'm listening to this, and I hear this, and I go, I'd like to donate to that. I think that's a worthy cause. How could I go about donating to that?
The website is coldcaseinitiative.org. You go on, just spell exactly how it is, coldcaseinitiative.org, and you go on there, and it has the ability to donate. There's a Facebook page and all that. And all I can say is if you do donate, we just had some recent success. As a matter of fact, there was a story in the Philadelphia about a Philadelphia case that was just, it was Chris's case, actually, out of there. It got solved recently. It made some great news, and it's the way to go. And we have cases now that are out there that we are trying to fund, and we know we're going to get good results. We're just trying to fund them through the lab itself. So it's not a matter of like, hey, we're looking for a few dollars. I mean, it's going directly to the lab.
The thing is that you and I talked about this already, Dave, is I'm starting that cold case program initiative at Wilmington University. To work with police departments, not just because of the fact that they don't have the resources to help them organize and categorize and digitize these numerous banker boxes that they have with all this evidence. And in doing that and looking at the solvability ratio and be able to solve some of these cases, I'm sure that they're going to be crossing paths with you in the very near future.
I hope so. And that idea you have, Ray, is outstanding, man. We're going to get something going with you too, pal. The facility you have there is outstanding. Outstanding. If anybody's taking a peek there, the facility is overwhelming. It's great.
And
So,
Dave, we've talked to you, bring in people to help like me, forensic linguistics, profiling. I mean, not a member of your company, but certainly there as as someone that if you need help, I'm glad to be there too. So that's what's great about what you're slowly getting into. I know you started your PI firm a few years ago, but you're slowly getting into it. It'll be full time starting the end of this month.
yeah.
So we're probably not the first people, but congrats on 38 years. Did I hear you?
38, yeah. 38 years.
Wow. Yeah. Almost 4 decades. Hard to believe. And you're probably making less money now than you will when your pension kicks in.
It's so funny you said that. And I hate to take time on stuff that doesn't matter, but one of the lieutenants was a friend of mine, put a nickel and a penny on a table, and he pushed it to me. And I go, what's this now? What are we doing here? He goes, that's how much I'm making an hour by staying working here. I said, you know what? I said, you're right. But at the end of the day, I would stay right to the end. We made a joke, that scene in Beverly Hills Cop where they throw Axel Foley out the glass window. I thought that would be me when I turned 65, throwing me out the door, But, I've talked to a lot of guys, and there have been members in VDOC and things like that, and say, hey, look, you're not giving it up. It's just another whole world. And then when I got introduced to cold cases with you guys and everybody else about 5 years ago, it really is a whole new world working cases, doing cold cases, than it is something that just happened moments ago. You know what I mean? We used to get aggravated going to a burglary a couple of days later. I mean, here we're looking at things 2, 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 years later, and there's still an opportunity to solve this. A whole new world. A whole new world.
Well, Dave, on behalf of Ray and I, we wish you and your new company the best of luck in that regard. You don't need luck. You got some really talented people there with you. Ray, I'll time us out, but any final words from you?
No, Dave, thanks for joining us today. Your story is amazing. Your career is even more amazing. And I want to thank you from one brother to another. Thank you for your service.
Same here, man. Thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
And You're ditto welcome. Here too. I want to thank our musical composer, Rick Schilling, who supplied some music for us. Our two producers, Matt Robinson, Matt McLaughlin. And everybody, please subscribe to the Cold Red podcast and follow us on Cold Red social media, and check us out on coldredpodcast.com. Again, Ray, always great being with you. Dave, thanks so much for a great interview tonight. And everyone else out there, we'll see you in the next episode of Cold Red.
Thanks for having me, guys. Bye-bye.
Hit the music.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Oh, man, you guys, thank you so much for having me. This is awesome. I really appreciate it, and the ability to let people know about that program. We really want to make that work. Nobody's hearing us now, right? Okay. So we actually have about a half dozen solves right now that we're just trying to fund, literally. So it's some good stuff and killing it. You know what I mean? So trying to see if we can make that work. Oh, did you? Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yep. And again, as you know, like there really is nobody. So people always think, oh, they're probably giving a portion to it. Literally, if you give us $100, that you could make it right out to the lab. We don't even want to see it. It just goes right there. We don't want 1 cent. You know what I mean? So it's just great stuff. But I can't thank you enough for having me, guys. I really can't believe it. Thank you so much. Awesome. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, guys. I'll see you. Bye-bye. Bye.